Well, hello. Thanks for making your way to the City of Bremerton Fire Department website, or actually wherever you end up seeing this. We've talked about a number of different places to host these videos, so I'm not sure exactly where it will end up, but I think it'll provide some good quality information. It's not professional, obviously, but it's good information, I think. So today's topic is change of use and occupancy. Probably the most difficult part of the whole code process, primarily because this is the grandfather clause. This is the part of I'm going to use a building and hey, it was a coffee shop before and I'm not really doing anything, but I want to put in a dry cleaning outfit or something like that. Very difficult in the code world to make a lot of these transitions. Now, if you're going from a dry cleaning to a coffee shop, that's pretty easy because the risk is considerably less. And I should I should note here that all of this type of stuff is from the fire department perspective, not necessarily building department or water department, any of those things. So, but the change of use and occupancy is a very, very difficult and emotional part of making code decisions in the fire marshal's office. So there's a very strict process that we use for doing it, and I'm hoping that this PowerPoint will kind of lay a lot of this out. This is very tough to work through because it's very it happens quite a bit that someone will sign a lease, or they didn't know there was going to be these requirements, and all of a sudden here they are because the building was used for something at one point, and these are all the hidden code requirements that come up because of a change of use or a change of occupancy. So here's kind of an evaluation of what we mean. Two different things. There's occupancy and there's use. There is, what are we calling this building? It's an A occupancy or an E or an F. You know, A stands for assembly, E stands for educational, F stands for factory, something like that. That's kind of the big umbrella title that it's given. But within that occupancy classification, there are uses. How are we using this? For instance, if you have an E occupancy and on one side of the hallway you're using it for 5th grade kids, and on the other side you're using it for daycare, both may be an E occupancy depending on exactly number of kids and some other factors. But one, these kids can line up and they can basically take care of themselves. They've practiced fire drills and they walk out to their designated spot. The other side, each one of these toddlers, infants, may need a care provider to take care of them. So that is kind of the difference in occupancy and use. It's kind of the nitty-gritty of the occupancy class. So here I used a comparison of a truck. So an occupancy would be the truck, but the use would be the specifics of that truck. The year 2002, it's an F-250, 7.3 liter short bed, and so on. Those are the details, and the code requirements for those talk about both use and occupancy. So it's a two-part test. If the change is in the form less restrictive to more restrictive, that's when you're going to see some of the code requirements kick in. If you're going from an occupancy that has a lot of code requirements in it to something that's less restrictive, then you're going to be okay. That's going to be that's going to be better. Some of those comparisons, though, are going to be, would a fire protection system be required? What about egress? So the number of doors, the hardware on those doors, push bars, panic bars, those types of things. If you're going from something that has been highly regulated to something that doesn't require as much code, as many code requirements, then you're going to be okay. Here's the code language that defines this. 38 or 3408.1, and this is conformance out of the building code. No change shall be made in the use or occupancy of any building that would place the building in a different division of the same group of occupancies or in a different group of occupancies unless such building is made to comply with the requirements of this code for such division or group of occupancies. Subject to the approval of the building official, the use or occupancy of an existing building shall be permitted to be changed and the building allowed to be occupied for purposes other than in other groups without conforming to all the requirements of this code for those groups, provided the new or proposed use is less hazardous based on life and fire risk than the existing use. And that's kind of the whole part. Occupancy and use, and then life or fire risk. So kind of paraphrased here, no change shall be made in use or occupancy of any building that would place it in a different division of the same group of occupancies or in a different group of occupancies. Translation, same occupancy is okay, same use is okay. If there's a change, it's going to require upgrades most likely. And once again, I probably just have a duplicate slide in there. So here's kind of a comparison. You can see on the left, we start out as a school, we go to a clothing shop. So a school is an E-occupancy, quite a few requirements in an E-occupancy, fire sprinkler systems, panic hardware, emergency lighting, and so on, to a clothing shop, which is an M-occupancy, quite a few less requirements. Back to an A occupancy or to an A occupancy, which would have very similar requirements to a school that we started out with, fire sprinkler systems and panic hardware and so on, to a daycare that is going to also have quite a few health department regulations, to a wood shop where we go from a people risk problem to a fire load risk problem. You know, combustible dust and all kinds of flammables, possibly if we have a spray booth or we're painting or doing something like that in there. So this is the transition from occupancy to occupancy and use to different types of uses. So probably the very best way to get an evaluation on this type of thing before you sign any contract, before you sign any lease. It's very easy to do, very simple, and in fact it would be a good idea even just give somebody at the city a call and maybe somebody can run out and take a look at it. We really want people obviously to be in these buildings. We want them being used, and there's plenty of businesses or spaces to go around. We just need to match you to the right spot. It's happened more times than once. Have somebody sign a lease or sign a contract, they're stuck with that space, and now before you know it, there's a whole bunch of code requirements that need to go into that building before they can open, and it's months and months and months later, and thousands of dollars before they're able to get going on something of the things that they didn't know were going to be required. So give Valerie a call, 473-5244, and set up a pre-submittal conference, or get some information, and we can get you in the right, help get you in the right building with the least amount of requirements. Here's something that I just recently added. It just came to light in another project. In nearly every case, and I'm only talking about from the fire marshal perspective, the word approved occurs 1,069 times in the fire code. And right above that is the definition of approved, acceptable to the fire code official. In old codes, 50 years ago or more, literally the codes just said whatever the fire chief wanted. It was very case dependent, and the fire chief or fire marshal at the time could literally just write these things down. Since then they've become more organized and put things into categories and done a better job of making things more predictable, but there are still thousands, and in fact 1,069 times, where there's some judgment that needs to be made. And these can be expensive, unfortunately, and you know, they're every single one of them is case dependent. There's a lot of judgment put into these. How does the fire department operate? Even sometimes, what direction is the fire engine coming from? What type of occupancy, and so on. So get advice early. Come out, give us a call, send me an email, and we can get you on the right track. Doing your homework early is your best defense. So a typical evaluation would be, what would be the requirements if it were built new? So if this is kind of my process for what I do when I have this type of question. If I have an older existing building and a particular type of business wants to go in, my very first evaluation in my mind is, what would be the requirements if this building were built new? If it were built right now, what would be the requirements? And that's pretty easy to do, really. The codes lay that out pretty easily. Then I'll look at the building. If all those requirements are already in there, fire alarm, fire sprinklers, all those things, you're good, you're golden. There's no hiccup, there's no problem. If some of those things aren't in place, then there's the evaluation. What was the building before? If it was a wood shop before and it's going to be a wood shop again, they're not changing any way that they're using it. There's no more people going into it. The fire load's not increased. If it's basically like for like, then it continue as is. However, if we're also doing that and there's a big remodel, then the existing building code kicks in, and we may have some code upgrades at that point. We will also take a look at the occupant load and special hazards. For instance, if it was a wood shop, but now all of a sudden we're going to put in a spray operation that it didn't have before, there's going to need to be some alterations made and some improvements included into the project. So here's my email address. This is, like I said, a very complicated issue, very challenging. Your very best bet is to do your homework early. Call somebody from the building department or the fire department. Get them to come out, take a look at this building, take pictures, and send them to us. That's a great option. Many times we know these buildings. We've been out there a number of times, and likely to even have some history on the building that you may not have been aware of. So that's the process of a change of use or a change of occupancy, a very complicated subject. If you have any questions, give me a call or actually shoot me an email at this address right here. Thanks very much.